I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1, action.
Are we the baddies?
I drink your milkshake.
Hey, this is Box Office Baddies coming to you from a balcony in beautiful Koreatown, Los Angeles. My name is Sean.
And my name's Nick, and welcome back to another episode. It is freezing
Yes,
cold
sir.
here in LA.
No, it's not though. Not really.
It's like 61 degrees.
It's SoCal
maybe.
cold, but
So I pulled out the beanie because it's been crazy in my eyes, but it actually was pretty hot over the weekend. We did a little beach trip. You want to talk a little bit about what we saw on the beach?
yeah, cool beanie by the way.
Thanks.
You look like you're like 8 years old.
My mom bought it from me, or bought it for me
Aw.
from Target. I think when in like the 8th grade.
There's
and I
certain
still have it.
beanies that like me or you would purchase for ourselves, and then there's like the beanies that you get from like an aunt or like a mom, you know, and they have like a distinct like mom beanie look to them, and I think
Yeah.
that's what you're wearing.
You know what's really butt rock is if you get the label like this right here.
Yeah, right over the eye.
Like the label like right over the corner.
Oh god,
Right
so
here?
so
It's
bad.
like super hard.
Oh, yeah.
Just out of respect for the culture, I'm gonna wear it this way for the rest of the episode.
For the butt rock culture.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, but we've been trying to stay sane, have fun during these crazy times, and we wanted to start off the pod with like a little tiny story. Nothing crazy, but also a little bit crazy. We were at the beach. What beach was that, Nick?
Driftwood Beach,
It's near-
Venice Pier. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
by Venice Pier. And we show up, and there was just like so many people. And I'm saying that from the position of like when the virus first started happening. And remember you saw the shit of people like in Florida, like just like in hordes at the beaches, and everyone from California or like the liberal states were just like, what the fuck? Like, fuck these guys, you know? Like, I cannot, do they not care about anybody? And we go to the beach the other day, and there's like insane numbers, like nothing's going on.
Yeah, well, on top of that, there was people at the beach, which people are going to go to the beach when it's 80 degrees in January in LA.
Yeah,
but
tell us the climax
The
of
crazy
this.
thing, though, was that, like, out of nowhere at, like, 4 p.m., we'd been sitting on the beach for, like, 30 minutes. This guy wheels out, like, on one of those, like, mobile, like, kind of wagon things for the sand with the big tires on it, like this huge speaker system and, like, a white kind of folding table that he just sets up in the sand with like a Pioneer DJ deck and like all the cables running to these speakers, and he starts playing rave music, and like all these people just start kind of like congregating like Burning Man style,
Dude, he looked like
kind of softly bumping like this.
he looks like the classic DJ who was like got beat up in high school, but like he's hip now, you know, and he's skinny and kind of malnourished, but it kind of works for him, you know, like he probably pulls some girls occasionally.
Yeah, it was a crazy sight. It was like all these like late 20s, 30s, like business professional people just getting lit. Like
It's all
on
people
a-
that were like in Sigma Nu, like in
Yeah.
college, you know,
yeah,
that like grew up and still want to party.
yeah, it definitely had like that, you know, leftover college vibe. But yeah, I mean, there's crazy stuff going on here in LA. Despite the shutdown, it's like pretty much ground zero, like for COVID, and there's people out there just going wild. You know?
Totally. Well, why don't we get into the movie that we are doing today, which is Black Swan, which came out in I believe 2010, and was directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis.
Yep.
And just a little backstory about this movie, about why it's important to me and why I picked it, is because I always loved movies growing up, but I don't think I really started to get into like art house type stuff until around the time that I saw this film. It was like one of the first ones that really made me go like, whoa, like movies aren't just like for sheer entertainment, like they can be like an art piece too, you know?
Yeah, why don't you tell the story of how you saw this movie?
Yeah. So I was in high school. I think I was like a freshman or sophomore or something. And my mom like wanted to like hang out or something, and she was just like, "Hey, do you want to go to the movies with me?" And I'm like, "Sure. What are we seeing?" She said, "Oh, we're going to see this movie Black Swan. It's supposed to be really good. Like it's like nominated for awards." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like what's it about?" And she's like, "Oh, it's about ballet." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." You know? And I'm not going to be like fuck you, mom. I'm not going to hang out with you, you know? So
Yeah.
I went in with pretty low expectations. And by the time the movie was over, I kind of felt like my mom wasn't crazy about it, and I loved it like 10,000 times more than she did. And I remember really being wowed by the viewing. It like kind of shifted things in my mind for how I feel about film in general. And yeah, that's basically the backstory.
Nice. Because your mom worked in the film industry too, right?
She did, yeah. That's how my mom and my dad met. My mom worked as a first AC at one point, which is a camera assistant. And yeah, so I have that background with both of them. But let me ask you right off the bat, what are some things that you expected coming into this film before you watched it? Because I remember I asked you, like, are you excited about this one or something? And you were just kind of like, I feel like I'm going to hate this shit for some reason. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, I kind of looked it up. Like, when you said we're doing the movie, I've obviously heard of the movie. A lot of people have said it's good, but I don't, like, there's a lot of movies that people, it's all just up to your perspective, and I didn't know if I would like it, and I was reading kind of, like, the breakdown on Google of, like, the plot summary on IMDb, like, not trying to learn too much, but just enough to know what I'm getting into. And I thought it was going to feel, like, slow, because generally kind of dramas, to me at least, like, feel slow.
Hey, say generally again.
Generally, in general, I would say that generally dramas are generally slow.
That is true.
But I thought that I was surprised, like, after watching it. I'll get to our kind of overall take, but I was surprised with, like, how much the pace of the film, like, worked despite there wasn't anything really happening other than, like, dialogue, right? Or
Sure.
stuff like that. So I think in a lot of ways, I got one drama that I really like is Lincoln, which is, like, all just conversational, and it's really boring, but for some reason, like, those 3 hours are, like, really,
Sure.
really bearable.
Yeah,
So
it works somehow.
to me, in the same way, I felt that this one worked, like, with, like, conversational drama,
Sure. And so I'll just quickly go over kind of like the background of the storyline. And what it is you have Natalie Portman. She plays the main character. She's a ballerina, and she's in, like, this dance school who, like, put on, like, these, like, big ballet performances, like, probably
it's like the New York dance.
yeah, like, seasonally they do it. And
I think it's a New York ballet.
yeah. And so she's involved in that. She's very dedicated, and she's very good, but she really wants to try to get a lead for a new dance that they're doing called the Black Swan, right? And there's, like, this innocence to her. Like, you can tell, like, right off the bat, like, she's very fragile, like, sweet, and she, like, cares deeply and is very passionate about what she does. And she starts to feel frustrated because she's, like, immensely talented technically, and that's why in this dance there's, like, the white swan and the black swan that are played. But the dance instructor wants for this production for the person to play both the white and the black swan, which is, like, essentially, like, good versus evil. And she starts to have, like, kind of like a tough time trying to get the role because she's so good at the white swan and being, like, fragile and innocent and stuff, but, like, she can't really embody, like, the black swan, which is supposed to be this kind of, like, darker, less technical, kind of, like, flowy and expressive type of dance.
Yeah.
And she kind of has drama a bit with the dance instructor, who has very weird methods. Do you want to talk about him for a bit?
Yeah, like, to me, he,
like the OG Harvey Weinstein of dance.
He's kind of a mix between Harvey Weinstein and the butler from Despicable Me. Like the guy who's kind of like the overlord of all the minions. But to me, he has, like, that very French, like, kind of bitter, like, just asshole kind of tendency. That's a stereotype of, like, I think artsy French people. And he is very commanding and very dominating to all of the dancers.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like he kind of takes a liking to, I'm trying to remember.
Nina is the name.
Yeah, Nina is Natalie Portman's character. He obviously takes a liking to her for some reason from the beginning, and you can kind of pick up on that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of escalates right to the point where everyone's going for the part of the Queen Swan.
Yeah, which plays
Right.
the white and the black swan.
Right. And it kind of escalates to a moment in the beginning of the film where he calls her into kind of a back room and kind of pins her and starts making out with her. And
Yep.
that's the beginning of you know, like her challenging the idea that someone else might get the part, and he's kind of playing mind games with her.
Mm-hmm. He's very like gaslighting.
Yeah, he's very like manipulative and trying to like. It's almost like I think in the movie they try to make it seem like he's smart or like high level to some degree because he's trying to mess with her emotions to maybe get more of a performance out of her and like make her feel something more, but it's still like pretty fucked up the way that he's like coaxing that out of her.
Sure. And so we'll get back into Nina's relationship with the dance instructor, but I kind of wanted to talk about specifically going back to Nina's innocence as a character. She has this really kind of weird relationship with her mom, who she still lives with, and I think it was intentional by Aronofsky to like write in this character of Nina who is kind of like, you're not really sure what age she's at. It's kind of like ambiguous and like if she's like in high school or if she's like in her early 20s or like late 20s, like you don't really know. But
yeah, it takes a while to reveal.
Yeah, exactly. And she's her mom is this very like domineering sort of like personality that like definitely pushes her to be a dancer, but is also like obsessed with her daughter, you know?
Yeah.
Like she has like a shrine of her in her room, and she wants to constantly know everything that she's doing, and it ends up being like really, really creepy, right? And you start to see that Nina's getting stressed because eventually she does obtain the role of getting like the Swan Queen, playing both the white and the black swan. But she's frustrated because she can't obtain that level of like darkness from the other side. And so she starts to get like immensely stressed, and throughout the plot you start to see her become that version of herself. But it's kind of like by accident, right? Like it is, but it isn't. It's like she has a run-in with Mila Kunis's character, who comes out of nowhere, and she's the one that has like the darkness to her, and she's like a perfect like black swan. And so Nina feels like threatened by her, and then also like this girl like wants to like be friends with her and kind of like take her out and like have her drink and like take Molly and go to clubs and different things, and like in a weird way I think she wants to see like that darkness like come out of her. But Nina also interprets her doing that as like maybe trying to sabotage her so that Mila Kunis' character could like obtain the Swan Queen thing and kind of just like fuck with her head, you know? So it's like she's constantly getting like manipulated by the dance instructor, and she's also getting like, or she's perceiving to be fucked with by Mila Kunis' character too, which is like really odd. And how do you feel about that dynamic between those two characters?
I thought it was really interesting. I thought that a big part of the movie, in understanding the movie, is the perspectives that like Nina has versus what everyone else has, because the movie is like so lived in her head, I feel like. So like there's moments where Nina has it in her mind that that Mila Kunis's character has her kind of worst intentions in mind.
Sure.
But really she actually is trying to make her a better person.
Yeah.
But the world that Nina's living in at that time is telling her that this girl is like vying for her throne almost. Like she treats it as like this possessive like role that she has to protect it, at all odds.
So that's basically like the main plot structure and how like what the movie is progressing towards, going towards like the finale and the climax, which we'll get to at the end. It's like a brilliant sequence. But I kind of want to like break down just like some of the filming styles that are interesting that help express like the polarity between like the light and the dark of people. Yeah. And one big thing that we noticed, and I think I noticed this in the past, but Nick really pointed it out to me. This is like my 6th viewing, 7th maybe. And there's a big use of mirrors in the movie. Mm-hmm. You want to kind of explain like how like the mirrors are used, or like when they're used?
Sure, yeah. It's kind of throughout the film, and I think it starts in the ballet studios. Like there's the classic mirror in the bar, that a ballerina works on.
Yeah.
To kind of view themselves. But throughout the movie, whether it's scenes with her mom or Mila Kunis, or the kind of ending scene with the broken mirror and the gouging kind of wound. Like, there's all these moments where the mirror is like a kind of recurring theme that I think is thematic of a ballerina, but it's also thematic of what they're trying to get to in the film, which is like at least Nina is seeing like a reflection of herself in the part, and she's trying to like define her version of herself as she's figuring out what the part is.
Yeah.
You know?
It's almost like this like subconscious desire like within her to become like this dark part of herself, to be able to like embody both of the swans. But she seems confused the whole time. Like, it's not her like sort of like fluid like initial thought that she's becoming that, because she doesn't want to be like evil. She's like innocent at heart, you know, but there's like this weird subconscious thing that's just like taking over her character and her like ego and different things like that. And yeah, like the mirrors is it's a really interesting thing. It also, they use the mirrors in a way to see or to show you that she is like figuratively like becoming like a swan, you know, like to where it's like not actually happening, but it's like used as like a like this like figurative way to show you like that's happening. And so it's like it starts with her looking in the mirror and turning and seeing like this rash like on the corner of her back, and she keeps like scratching it, and her mom's like, don't scratch it, and it's just like it's supposed to like embody like her neuroses about like the act of trying to like take on such a complicated role. But again, it's also like figuratively showing you that she's like becoming the swan. So it's like kind of foreshadowing her like destiny like within this role. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really interesting. Like it's all leading up to like essentially this like final sequence of like her wanting to embody like both things. And yeah, is there something else you want to add about like some like thematic parts of the movie?
Sure, yeah. I think that one of the things about the movie that I enjoyed the most was like the light against the dark the whole time. You know, like you have anytime that Nina was in the ballet studio, it felt like it was almost like she was in heaven or like in a bliss state, to where she's almost like blacked out to what she's experiencing because she's in the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas whenever she was like in the club with, you know, like Mila Kunis's character, or at home with her mom, like it was like she was, at least while she was studying her role, like everything else that wasn't that place where she was working on the part was like held to her, you know?
Sure. Yeah, and I think along the way too, there's certain like sound effects that are used, and also like camera movements, and the way that like the dance sequences are captured, or just to like kind of get across like general like neuroses. One of the things I noticed off the top was the sort of like glitchy camera movements, you know, and like they're like pirouetting, like spinning, and there's just like while they're spinning, there's like this kind of like glitch to make it look like faster and crazier. And like as those glitches are happening, like from the cinematography, there's like these crazy like foley like sound effects to like exaggerate like the motion. And like also just like the preparation too, like it was awesome how they just show like on a side note like how much prep goes into just getting ready for even like one day of being a ballerina, you know, like when like they're cutting up like the bottom of their shoes like with like a knife to be able to like create more traction on the shoe, like just seeing how like uncomfortable the shoes are, and like just like putting your feet in them, like lacing them up, like aggressive stretching, keeping your weight down, like all these things that really kind of just show you on like a side note that there's like a lot on the line like every day for these dancers, which is kind of crazy, you know. But
sure,
I think that the funny thing about the movie though is that anyone who hears about it, including like myself the first time I watched this, or like when Nick heard about it, is like, you're like, oh great, it's like about ballet. It's like, and let's be honest, like today, like no one really cares about like ballet that much unless you're like in that world. Right. Like I think everyone has like some appreciation for what they do, because it's like seems like it requires an immense amount of skill, but it's not really like about like ballet, right? It's that's just sort of like like a premise that's used to like get across like bigger themes of like good and evil and like strife and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to me it was about like a struggle for like independence, like internally,
Mm-hmm.
like for Nina's character. But like, why don't we talk a little bit about like the relationship between Nina and her mom? Because that was really weird throughout the whole movie. Like, what was your take on that?
Well, yeah, I talked about it a little bit, kind of off the top of the episode, but the mom, again, is like very like domineering. She really is like obsessed with her daughter, and it's both like a good obsession in the sense that the mom wants to be like really there for her daughter, and like you can tell would do anything for her daughter, but it's almost like kind of like sabotaging towards the daughter in a way, because like she's so like wrapped up in her daughter's shit that like the stress that Nina already experiences is kind of made worse by the mom's like, I guess, like insecurity and like control. And it's interesting. It almost seemed like in certain sequences it felt like a horror movie, like where like the mom would like be in the room, remember, where she's like touching herself, and she like looks over and her mom was still in the room, and then you hear like the crazy like violin with like dark piano when it pans to the mom. It's like I think she was supposed to kind of fit in as like this like horrific figure at certain points.
Yeah, to me it felt like Nina was being held back by her mom, in the sense where it sounded like they alluded to the fact that her mom was like a ballerina that wasn't as good, or wasn't in the position as good as Nina was.
She was like, Mom, you never made it past the corp.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, she was kind of shitting on her, and I think that Nina's mom was projecting like onto her maybe the failure that she experienced.
Yeah.
And it was at home. It was about that fight between, her mom projecting, that experience onto her success or potential success, like as the Swan Queen.
Dude, did you ever meet those kind of moms, like in high school? Like I knew specifically these girls, or even like one of my good guy friends, where it's like the parents wanted to be so involved in like their kids' lives, where you'd hear like they would go out like on a date like with the kids, like like they would get taken to a restaurant and the mom would be sitting there while like the guy and the girl are trying to like interact, and it's like so awkward.
That's crazy.
I even knew of like this one mom, bro, that like would constantly hit up like her daughter and her daughter's friends and be like, hey, like what's the tea, like who's talking shit, like, hey, what happened to Jessica? And it's just like, Jesus, bitch, like what's wrong with you?
That's crazy.
All right, so yeah, I kind of want to talk about this final sequence now, because basically everything we've been talking about thus far has been kind of leading up to this like amazing like masterclass, super masterful like last like maybe 20 minutes of the movie.
Yep.
And it's everything that was been going on, like all of like the neuroses and like the sort of polarity and battle between good and evil, like really comes to a head in like this last scene, and like just before this, Nina kind of becomes like obsessed with this past dancer who was like an earlier student of the kind of like shitty like dance instructor,
Right.
And he treated like this chick basically the same
Beth,
way he treated Beth the same way as Nina's being treated currently. So like Nina goes and like visits her like in the hospital because she like basically jumped out in front of a car and like committed suicide because of all the stress she was under. And so basically after she visits her, it's like a bad experience because the girl's just like, get the fuck out of here, like I hope like you like the way he treats you, or blah blah blah. Like, she's just like jealous and like mentally ill and whatever. But so it comes to the scene, and it's basically this kind of like montage of like back and forth of her getting ready and like prepping for the performance. And at this point it's like just like figurative madness, like there's fucking she's like literally like transforming like into a swan, like her legs are like
Right.
bending, like the itchiness and the scratch that she saw on her shoulder was like feathers were starting to come out. And she's just was like fully embodying the swans. Like she's getting closer to being like quote unquote perfect for this dance, even if it's at the expense of her complete well-being. And so it's like she sees Mila Kunis's character like in there, and she like imagines her being like, hey, I'm gonna like fucking like take your part, blah blah. And so like Nina fucking stabs Mila Kunis's character with like a piece of glass, and you're kind of just like what the fuck, like that's so crazy. Like you kept looking at me, you're like, dude, is this really happening? Like what's going on? I'm so confused. And she kind of just like puts her like in a storage closet, like in the green room.
Take a shower.
Yeah. And then she just fucking goes out for the first act of the dance. And basically what happens off the top is she kind of like fucks up on the first move, which is really interesting because she fucked up in the part of the White Swan, which was the only thing that she was perfect at, because of like the innocence in the beginning of the movie. And right after she fucks up, do you want to kind of like talk about like how it transforms, or what it transforms into after, like when she goes back to the green room, like what she sees?
Sure, yeah. She basically, forces Mila Kunis's body into the shower. It's leaking blood. She goes out for the second act, comes back, and then has like a few moments of realization to where she's kind of coming back from these hallucinations that she's had, and she, has stuffed a towel before she'd gone out for that second act over the crack where the door is.
Yeah.
To stop the blood, but she pulls the towel up and there's no blood.
Yeah. COVID.
Excuse me. But yeah, there was no blood, and that was kind of the moment where, for me as a viewer, I knew that none of that was real, and that was just like a metaphor for what she was going through.
Exactly. And so at this point, she looks down and she sees like the gash wound that should have been on like Mila Kunis's character, right? But it's like on herself, and so she's bleeding. But like she still has like this like mental fortitude to like go back out there and finish the dance. And at this point she goes out as like the Black Swan. So at this point, before, like it was kind of a disaster, like the dance instructor's freaking out because like she fucking like fucked up in the beginning.
She fell.
And you hear like the crowd murmuring, and like it's just like turning into a spectacle in like the ballet community, I imagine. The critics are going crazy. And she fucking goes out as the Black Swan with just like this crazy look in her eyes, and also just like the editing of the special effects on like skin, like with texture, where you see like almost these goosebump looking things like fluttering throughout her body that like look like there's like feathers that are like gonna be popping out of her. Mm-hmm. And she's almost like on this like weird, it almost seems like sexual, like she's just like so like fucking into it and embodying like this like Black Swan thing, that she just feels like powerful and feels like this weird dark power that she's like never felt before. And it's like she's loving it, and she's still fucking bleeding at this point. And so she finishes like the last few acts or whatever, right? And she's killing it. She goes up to the dance instructor off the stage, and the dance instructor's like, oh my god, like like you have to go back out there, like they're fucking cheering for you, this is crazy, like go out and bow again. And then she fucking grabs him on the face, and like that evil part of her, even though he's an asshole, she just makes out with him, and he could not look happier as like a fucking shitty abuser. And she goes back out for like this last sort of scene where it's supposed to be the very, very end of the play, and she's like fluttering back, and at this point her feathers turn into like actual wings, and they pop out of her back, and as she's doing like this ballet dance move like this, like embodying a swan, it fucking like turns into these crazy wings, and she goes up to like this tip top of this staircase that they constructed like on the actual stage. And then there's supposed to be like a mattress behind her, and she's supposed to like jump back, and it's supposed to be like in the play, the Black Swan kind of like jumps back, and it's supposed to be like the death, I think, of that swan.
Yep.
And
suicide.
Exactly. And at this point she's still like bleeding and shit, and no one in like the dance corp like knows that she's in trouble, and she just jumps back in like pure bliss, like no pain, lands on the thing, and she's just like laying there. It's like super like hip shot, and it zooms in on her face, and then the rest of the dance corp comes in and finds out that she's like bleeding and like she's dying. And the really cool, interesting thing about that is if you really look at the actual like fable of like the Black Swan within this production, you realize like the whole movie was like acting out like a variation of that same story, like everything that's occurred, like the White Swan becoming the Black Swan dying. And so she just wants to be perfect, and what perfect means to her in that moment is like her like getting a wound, stabbing herself, and then dying as the Black Swan, because it's like she's trying to do it like exactly how like the best it could be done. In her eyes, that meant like her committing suicide essentially and dying. And then you just hear like this crazy like applause, which always gives me goosebumps. And then the film fades to white. Super hip choice.
Yeah, fade to white.
Yeah.
Take us to heaven.
Right. Yeah. But don't you think that's so fucking cool though? Like that last sequence. Like I just feel like it's. I wouldn't even say every part of this movie is like so perfect. I think it's pretty close to it, but like that last scene is just like so good. Like I don't care who you are, you're gonna be like captivated by that shit. Like it's so nice.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I thought it was really powerful and really well done, and it felt like it kind of put a button on the theme of everything that had happened up to that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely to me like the best part of the whole movie.
For sure. Well, thank God, because it's supposed to be the best part, you know? Fucking
Yeah.
climax.
For sure.
It's weird, too, that the climax in this film is also the resolution, like, at the same time, you know? It's like,
it's like a non-resolve. It's like it resolves, but
it's like the hipster ending, right? Like, where it's like...
But it's not like a nihilist hipster ending, you know, like where it's ever, like...
No, there's actual, like, meaning to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like she survives. It's not like she just kills herself and that's the end. Like,
Well, she might have died, though, because I think that she was supposed to
the fact that they
fulfill
don't
the prophecy.
show that it's left kind of open-ended.
That's it.
That it leaves some hope in there, so that's good. I like that.
For sure, man. So you asked me this last week for Goodfellas, but I want you to rate the movie out of 10 for how you personally felt about it, like your own bias, and then I want you to rate it as objectively as possible out of 10.
I'd say my number is the same for both. I'd say that I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
That's good, considering like this isn't usually your type of movie.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's something you have to put in front of the right person, or like you have to be in the right mood for. Like it's definitely a mood film, but I mean, it surprised me. So I'm glad.
I'm glad, dude. Hell yeah.
How about you? What's your like? This obviously you said is in your top.
It's top 5 ever.
Top 5, but maybe instead of giving it a rating, like just say if you had to distill it down to like 1 or 2 sentences, like why is this in your top 5?
Okay, I'll just throw some buzzwords at you real quick. So, amazing pacing, incredible career-defining performance by Natalie Portman. Modern master of cinema, Darren Aronofsky, directed it, and this is like, to me, maybe besides like that and The Wrestler, is like a showcase as like what he can do, and I think he's probably one of the top directors of like our era, you know? Like I'd put him up with like artsy type films. I'd put him with like Paul Thomas Anderson and people like that. Like he's like very respected, and he doesn't always get the most like viewership, but for people who really like this kind of movies, he's like the guy, do you know what I'm saying, or one of the guys. So I guess that's kind of how I felt. I know that's more than 3 sentences, but
oh, it's okay. But I mean, this one is definitely a lot less butt rock than The Wrestler. I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we should do The Wrestler in the
we
future.
need another butt rock episode. So I'm putting this out into the ether. Glue, Hound, Crow, our character guests that have been on the show so far. If you have a butt rock film that you want to bring to the table, slide in the DMs. We'll see you there.
All right, dude. I this is how I want you to wrap up the episode, all right?
All right.
I want you to do your best Black Swan at the very end, at the top of the stairs, flapping wings at all, and then I want you to make like a nice like crow swan type like noise while you're doing it, all right?
Okay, just in my seat here.
Yeah, in your seat.
Okay.
All right, and look right in the camera while you're
Okay,
doing it.
this is my impersonation of a swan
Uh-oh.
pulling its way out of a seated position in a lake. So, because you have to get yourself out of the water, right? So.
All right, ready? I'm going to count you down.
All right, count me.
I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, action.
That's all I got. That's it.
That's all she wrote, folks. Bye-bye.
Drink your milkshake.